You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to www.rpurham.com. Hey, good day to you all. Happy Motivated Monday. Yes. Hope y'all had a great weekend and you stayed out of jail and didn't blow up any Teslas or threw any Molotov cocktails and all that good stuff out there. No, seriously, hope you all had a great weekend and you had some fun and enjoying the nice spring weather. Welcome to spring. Yes, down here in Texas, actually, it's been feeling like it's summertime, like the last couple of weeks anyway. So, but we're getting it in. It's been a busy time of the year actually down here in the legislature, especially. Well, I don't know. I can't say that because the last couple of days they was AWOL. So, but that's another story for another time. Hey, we got a very special guest with us. He's actually back with us. He was here a few weeks ago, and we're going to jump into some things because it's a lot of craziness going on out there. So we're gonna talk about all that today. So we got none other than Mark Gober. He is the author of An End to the Upside Down Reset, and I'm just going to say series because we're going to talk about a couple of the books in his series. So I'm not going to give the specific titles, but we're going to say into the up down the up down and into the upside down reset. And he is also, excuse me, he is also a graduate of magna cum laude from Princeton University. Mark is the author of 7 books in the series, which spans politics, economics, medicine, cosmology, and more. His book, An Into Upside Down Thinking, in 2018 won the IPPY Award for Best Science Book of the Year. He is the host of the podcast Where Is My Mind? Additionally, he has served on the board of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, since 2019. Previously, Gober has a partner at Sherpa Technology Group in Silicon Valley and worked as an investment banking analyst with UBS in New York. He has been named one of IAM Strategy 300, the world's leading intellectual property strategist. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the summit, presenting the others, Mr. Mark Gober. Hey, good morning. Welcome back.
Morning, Randy. It's great to be here with you.
Yes, thank you. Mark, it has happened finally. Last time you was on, we was talking about, the Great Reset and all that good stuff. And I think we kind of like, we went into a different trajectory with it than what's happening right now. But we're still on course. We're par for the course. Because now the left, they once loved, electric vehicles, EVs, and they loved Elon Musk. Now they're destroying them and they're trying to kill them. so in that sense, there's a great reset going on there. And I'm just like, this is amazing. but the also on the other tip of that is Jasmine Crockett, Representative Jasmine Crockett. She's up in North Texas, Dallas area there, and she's out here, mocking the handicap Governor Greg Abbott, who's wheelchair bound, and calling for harm to Senator Ted Cruz for him to get hit upside the head and everything else. And now we're seeing this uprising, or I should say uptick of these congressional members cursing on TV. They just throwing f bombs out there left or right. I don't know if it's just like they're trying to gel with the younger generation with the vernacular. I don't know what it is, but I want to get your sense of what's going on out there and talk to us because your book touches on all of this. It's
Yeah,
like
my
it's like
initial
it's like timing. It's like perfect timing.
yeah, it's true. A lot of the things that are in my book, especially in Into the Upside Down Reset, they're happening in front of our eyes. And I talk in that book about the ideology of leftism, which I think is distinct from liberalism. Leftism, for
Mm-hmm.
example, would say we should only have free speech as long as we don't deem that speech to be hateful. Whereas liberalism would say free speech is a good thing. So those are the important nuances. And what you're pointing out to in some of these current event examples is that sometimes the idea that words are violence, which we hear from the left, means to them that we should initiate violence because those words are violence and we're so compassionate that we're trying to protect. You see how the psychology somehow gets warped there, where the underlying desire to be compassionate can lead to uncompassionate things. And that's the hypocrisy we see, I think, on a fundamental level everywhere.
Huh? You just said something there. You just kind of like my mind kind of like did that Windows wheel. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Words are violence, and they do this, and we tend to do that as well on the right. But we kind of have like a different way of saying it. We say words matter in context of trying to explain something, and it's usually to combat what the left is saying, because they like to twist the meaning of something, and what we see now is almost the Bible actually speaks to this. The Bible speaks to there's gonna be a time where the dark is the light and the light is the dark, and what's good is now evil and what's evil is now good. So it speaks to like the twisting and the changing of the meaning of things that we commonly know things as. And so you're right, and I have a hard time grappling with folks when I'm having these conversations out here in the political sphere, and I come across a hardcore leftist, not even a moderate leftist. Moderate leftists they tend to be a little bit more sensible in their conversation. It's the really extreme ones. It's like you really want me to take you seriously. You really want to, I just can't because you're not living in reality. You're saying things that you don't even believe in because when you walk out of this silo, you're going to cling to what you know is to be true because at the end of the day, you still have to eat, you still have to have a roof over your head, you still have to abide by societal rules. Just for the moment, you're engaging in this alternate reality and saying all these things that you don't believe is true and you know it's not true, but you're virtue signaling and doing all these things. And once you escape that bubble and you're done hanging out with your friends, then you're like, oh, okay. Now that my face has been captured, now my name is out there and everything else. Oh crap! What am I gonna do? And now you want to try to denounce it and separate yourself from it, which we saw in a congressional hearing last week when they was talking about defunding what was that PBS. And she was like, well, I evolved, and it's like, yeah, no, but you okay, you evolved, okay, I give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you changed your views a little bit over time. Sure, we all grow up a little bit, fine, but it still speaks to the general theme and sense of how people generally act in their silos. You took to Twitter, you took to the streets, you put out these memos, these emails, you made public statements. This was your mindset, for the longest time. But now that you're called out, now that your livelihood is threatened, now all of a sudden you evolved. So and so it speaks to it's a great point that you make, and I wanted to know, like, how in your opinion, because I know you're not a psychologist, you're not a psychiatrist, you're not a doctor, so we're not gonna get into the DSM of the DSM guides and all that stuff. We're not gonna do that. But I want to get your thoughts on how what is your advice to those that group of people that are engaging in that kind of behavior? How do they escape that and say, you know what, maybe I should cut this shit out and live in reality a little bit better?
Well, two thoughts come to mind. Number one is the hypnosis of mind control. When people have been in an echo chamber and they've only heard one thing, it becomes so ingrained that it's hard to get out of that. So my advice there would be, if someone's really interested in the truth, to just listen to other perspectives and think about logic. If I said this thing and have this principle, am I holding the principle in all cases? Very basic things like that. But I can understand when emotions get high, it can be difficult to see that kind of rationality. And then the other thing that I question sometimes is whether people are actually interested in the truth, or if they're interested in protecting themselves or protecting the beliefs that they've had in the past. So my advice in that case would be to try to actually be devoted to the truth. We often see that that's not really the case. And that what I've found, because I've written so many books that are challenging paradigms, so Randy, you can imagine the pushback I get, not just on the political spectrum, like in every other area. So I'm used to having these conversations. I can detect pretty quickly if someone is actually interested in the truth, or if they're interested in defending their perspective at all costs.
Yep.
And if they have no interest in the truth, then it's really not a worthwhile conversation.
True.
It's not worthwhile for anyone's energy.
True, very true. I actually am engaged currently in a lively debate about the Constitution, Article 5, and there's yeah, I agree. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but there's a couple of groups out there, and they're conflating, a constitutional convention versus an Article 5 convention, and it's like, you know what the truth is. You know what the difference between the two, but you're constantly trying to placate and and mix up. So you can't even have a real conversation with them because they're stuck on believing the lie. So
Yeah.
and that's dangerous. That's a very dangerous I guess you would say dangerous world to live in and be in, because now you're intentionally misleading other people who may look up to you or may aspire to want to be like you based on your character of a person, not realizing that what you're espousing is actual falsehoods, and so that's a dangerous path to tread down, and I encourage people to take to have discernment when you're engaging in these kind of conversations with anybody. It could be a politician, it could be a minister, a priest, pastor, what have you. Just regular people on a day-to-day basis, teachers, instructors, and what have you, because you'll find that everybody has an agenda, everybody has a narrative to a degree, just based on what they're doing in life. They're pushing something. I'm
Yeah.
pushing. I push the truth. I'm pushing the like the truth out there on whatever it is. It's like, okay, I may have this agenda, but what's the truth behind the agenda? And that's
Right.
what I want to push, is like, what's the reality? What's the truth? What's the so what here? What do people need to know? Because at the end of the day, the truth is going to come out regardless. So I might as well just be at the forefront of pushing it. So it makes my life easier, that's how I look at things. And I want to talk about. I want to dive into the first book, Liberty, the end to upside down Liberty. Talk about this one, and what's going on in this book, and what people can
Yeah.
expect from it.
Well, this is a controversial one. And I also just want to express my admiration for what you just said, Randy, about your search for the truth. And like that's been my incentive too. But I also understand that some people are rightly wanting to defend their own views. But the search for the truth requires people often to acknowledge where they've been wrong in the past. And that's been part of my learning journey, writing 7 books and saying, this thing I wrote in the first book, maybe this sentence, I would change it now. I don't fully agree with myself. That's a hard thing to do, and it takes some time. So I also want to acknowledge that people who have a hard time with that it can take growth. So we have to acknowledge everyone's struggling a little bit.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true.
Yeah.
It does require growth and the knowledge. Even you don't necessarily have to be. It's not necessarily that you're wrong, but you grow in knowledge. So you grow in exposure to new information, not necessarily changing information, but just new information or expanded information. You may have just like the surface of something, so you know that to be the truth, but there's more information to it that actually gives it more perspective, and so now you're like, oh, so that's what it actually means. It doesn't mean just this. It means more than just that, And so
Right.
you grow in that, and so you feel conflicted, like I was wrong, but you wasn't necessarily wrong. You just wasn't fully matured in your perspective, and so and that's okay. And I acknowledge that all the time. I'm like, I look back on some of my old videos and stuff like that. I'm like, ooh, delete that, but it's already out there. So, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We grow. As you get older, you grow. So it's all good. But yes,
Yeah.
please.
We're both in the joys of being able to learn publicly, so people can see where we've been.
Yes.
Where we might not agree with ourselves in the past. So that's just a unique position to be in. But
Sure.
this book, An End to Upside Down Liberty, it's interesting that one came for me right after the 2020 era of COVID, because up to that point I wasn't a political person at all. I really didn't know much about politics, and then 2020 hit. All of a sudden, everyone's locked at home, watching what's happening with the upcoming election. And I think everyone became a bit more political. And for me, this was an eye-opening period. And as someone who was not very political, but you can imagine, Randy, I was living in Silicon Valley and worked in New York in investment banking and went to Princeton. I now realize that most of my world was very liberal or even left. At the time, I didn't know it, because I was like just living in that world. I didn't know there was another view. And then COVID hit, and I saw that the conservatives were very much more pro-freedom as it pertained to everything that was happening medically. Whereas most people that I knew, they were more in favor of the government trying to keep everyone safe and restricting behavior.
Yeah.
So that made me interested. I said, well, what is really liberty? So in this book, it's a really controversial one, because I talk about whether or not is limited government actually even possible. Because I think most of you and I, and probably most of your audience, we'd agree that having a small government is better than a big government. Like, leave people alone. But can we actually have a government that remains small forever? Or is it always going to grow when you have a political monopoly? Because that's what government really is.
Yeah.
It's a political monopoly over a certain territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you think about it that way, it starts to get really dicey as to why do we even have government at all? Like, let's just start from scratch here. Imagine we didn't even know how to structure society. We never heard about a constitution, right? How would we structure it? And there's this principle in libertarian thinking. It's known as the non-aggression principle, that we shouldn't initiate any aggression against another person's body or the property that they own.
Yeah.
And if someone initiates aggression against you or your property, you have a right to self-defense, right? And aggression could be physical violence, fraud, theft, coercion, any extortion, anything like that. And the issue then becomes, if we look at government as a political monopoly where we just have this sort of social contract, we don't sit down with the government and say, you're going to provide these services for us, and here's how we can terminate. This is what the price is going to be. In other areas of society, that's what we do. But with government, it has these special privileges. We have this implied consent rather than the mutually agreed upon explicit consent that you would have with any other service provider in society. So you start to, from this perspective, see government as an entity that can be inherently dangerous, which I think conservatives are good in understanding and being skeptical of government. But in this book, An End to Upside Down Liberty, I look at, well, what if we got to a point where we actually got rid of the political monopoly and privatized all of the functions? And even there's so many ways this could happen, where we take government, and because government provides very important things, defense and military, law, court systems, road servicing. These are all really important things. The question is, does it have to be provided by people in the structure of a political monopoly, or could it be provided by people in the structure of just a free market? Yeah. And you get into theoretical economics and the work of the Austrian School of Economics and Murray Rothbard. So, and the last thing I'll say before I pause here, I think I was drawn to this topic even more so because I had done a lot of work on the nature of consciousness and looking at natural law and like moral imperatives, looking at near-death experiences where people, they're about to die, they're like in cardiac arrest, and then they're resuscitated and they tell us about the nature of reality. What they often talk about is they will relive their life through the eyes of other people,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll feel the pain they inflicted or the joy they brought those people, and they come back and they say, whoa, life's not about this materialistic stuff. There's some higher purpose for us.
Purpose. Yep.
And they talk about the golden rule, that we shouldn't do things to other people that we wouldn't do to ourselves. So what I started to do is to take this, what you might call natural law, and researchers like Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia, he studies these near-death experiences. He says what people are coming back and saying is that this golden rule is actually natural law.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about, natural law, we need to treat people a certain way. Does government do that? Actually, no, government doesn't, because it can impose things that we didn't agree on. Government, by its very nature, the way it's currently structured, violates natural law.
Yes.
So it becomes sort of like a mind-blowing exploration.
It is, and you're absolutely right. You know, the government is structured to inherently violate natural law because they're creating man-made laws. So it's just right there in itself is contradictory. You know, they have to have control over your liberties. Yeah. So, for example, when the founding fathers laid out, you know, in Article One, their enumerated powers. Their enumerated powers were largely relegated to the natural laws in a broader scope of governance. Like they said, hey, we will only do things to control how we're gonna, you know, regulate the government. You know, we're not going to bother you per se, but just how we're going to function. We're going to just operate as a country. These are things that we're going to regulate. Whatever else you do, that's your business. As long as it doesn't bother, you know, our functionality as a government. So there you go. These are things. These are it. This is. Look at these numbers, guys. Look at these issues, and just know, you know, these are the boundaries. Okay. And then Hamilton said, okay, that's cool, but however, comma, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, the necessary and proper clause. We will incorporate additional laws as necessary and proper to enforce these laws. It's these enumerated powers. So now we got this breadth of expansion of laws that go way beyond the scope of those enumerated powers. And the problem we have today in 2025 is you will find that 90%, and I say quite literally, that's a high number to throw out there, but it's quite true. 90% of the American people don't even know what those enumerated powers are because they don't care. They just live their lives, and we have been walking around almost like mindless zombies, and we just go with the flow of things, and we have allowed the government to take away our natural laws. We have allowed the government to say, yeah, you're not important. We don't care what you think. And we're like, okay. And we're just going about our business. And as long as our sovereignty as a nation isn't affected, we don't care what the government does. And the funny reason why I say that is because history has shown us this on 3 occasions: Pearl Harbor, 9/11. Actually, I would go. Sorry, Pearl Harbor. Yeah, 9/11, and Desert Storm. You know, it was like those particular instances is what our sovereignty as a nation was threatened to a degree. So we were brought together as a country. We didn't care about anybody else or anything else. It was like, wait a minute. Wait. You mean to tell me that we're about to be, you know, we're about to go to war with another nation? Oh, okay. We need to come together, you know, and Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green, you know, the purple, the Martians that was already here for decades. We was all buddy. You know, we is like, what you need? But okay, here you go. And that's how we operated. But now, as long as we have peace among us, peace in the world per se, we can fight amongst ourselves, and we can have this division and have this ignorance in terms of not knowing how our government is working, what the government is doing to us, and everything else. And now that we have an administration that's saying, no, we need to get back to those roots. We need to get back to having the enforcing the enumerated powers of Congress, and Congress, in large part, agrees. And so here we are. We got the rebirth, rather, of Doge, because a lot of people don't realize that Doge was already in existence under the Obama administration. But we're not going to get into that right now. And Elon Musk and company, they're going through and they're quite literally stripping away all of the things that was not enumerated in the government under Article 1, the powers that the government had with all this money that they're spending and everything else. And people are mad because they have been conditioned to say, I want the government to control me. I want the government to spend my money. And we see evidence of this. It's like, hey, wake up, guy. Elon Musk is literally walking around giving out $1 million check right now to people in Wisconsin. And there's people mad about that. There's people, he was sued, and the Supreme Court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, it's his money. Why are y'all trying to sue him for? Like, what are y'all doing? Like, mind blowing. He's literally lifting people out of poverty, one check at a time, and people are upset at this. People are mad that he's going through finding that Social Security has been getting frauded, for years with people that's been around since the era of FDR. and Lincoln, type of thing, like 130 year olds still drawing Social Security. And it's like, how can you possibly wake up mad about this? Talk to me, Mark. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, you were alluding to something earlier about basically the conditioning.
Yeah.
And I think the conditioning comes from the media and the technology industry, but it also comes from education, especially with regard to the view of government.
Yeah.
Because it feels to me like most of us are trained from a young age just to blindly trust government and to think that everyone in government is here to serve the people. And I'm not saying that every politician is bad, but that we're not taught to have that skepticism. And in fact, we're often taught that the skepticism is somehow dangerous, that you should trust your government. They're here to serve us. But are we really the customers? I mean, we're not customers in the same way that when you hire, let's just say, a consultant, you'd be the client and they're your service provider and that you really hired them. In this case, we're born with it and they're our overlords in many ways. So I think that reversal in thinking is really important. And without that critical thinking, people can become very complacent. Like you say, they don't really ask questions. And then they can be led into these narratives that are extremely paradoxical. For instance, the really hatred we see for Elon Musk, I don't know a better word to use. It's hypocritical because on the left, we've also seen a lot of very wealthy people cozy up with government. And those people don't seem to be criticized. George Soros, Michael Bloomberg, and this is a natural phenomenon, by the way. One of my favorite quotes by P.J. O'Rourke, he said that when buying and selling are controlled by legislation, the first things to be bought and sold are legislators.
Mm-hmm. Yep, very true. It's very true, and it is interesting how no one on the left see Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they're like the self-made money in politics. You don't see them necessarily. You don't hear about them being bought by anybody. So they step into this arena and they say we're gonna clean up this corruption and everything else. And they're like, well, you're corrupt, and it's like, prove it. Well, I can't. And so, but everybody else around them have been caught up in some level of corruption or part of the corruption scheme, and so they're being exposed and everything else, and so there's this trickle down effect. I would say trickle down economics in this regard, because now you're seeing that these smaller little nonprofits, and these are the ones that's actually outraged. These are the ones that's actually protesting in the streets because now their livelihood is being disrupted because the politicians has been feeding the coffers of the other friends that's in the neighborhoods in these communities and whatnot. And so they're like, hey, I'm sorry, but re-election's coming back around. Just vote for me again, keep me in office, and we will wait this out and we will get the money back. And they're like, people are like, yeah, we don't see this coming back anytime soon, guy, because now that we're exposed, now that the American people have been woken up to this, this may never come to fruition again. Now people are gonna be like having microscopes onto the government and want to have an audit and everything else. They're gonna be fully keen into how money is being spent. So screw you, guy, you're out of here, type of thing. So that's what I see happening with this, going forward. And, to the likes of, like you just said, to your point, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all these elitists that have been on the left traditionally that was cozying up to the government, they seen the writing on the wall, November 3rd, not even November
Yeah.
5th, November 3rd. They was like, hey, Trump, hey, I'm sorry, bro. Hey, look, let me come down to Mar-a-Lago. Let's have some drinks. Let's talk about this. And he's like, come on, come on. I'll forgive you this time. Fool me once, shame on me. Try to fool me twice. You about to get doged. So, and that's what we're seeing it literally unfold before our very eyes, and people on the left are upset and mad about this. And it's like, why are you mad? This is the 3D chess that the government plays, and people that's politically experienced. This is the kind of games that they play in back rooms all the time. It's just now in the public eye, and we are just not purview to this kind of stuff that's going on. And so it just goes back to comes to the next point, the upside down reset. Your next installment here, how it can fool caring people into supporting harmful causes. I just so love this title, man, because we're seeing people. I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna play this clip real quick, because I actually had this happened here in Austin, Texas. By the way, uh, you check this out. This is the hilarious.
Multiple Tesla vehicles. The 33-year-old man was caught on camera ramming a parked Tesla with a mini four-wheeler ATV. Authorities believe he's behind a string of similar incidents across the city of Texarkana. They arrested him after spotting him riding that ATV. He's now facing felony criminal mischief charges.
Hello, I'm Mark.
This is the kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Your your book, like I said, your book is succinctly titled "How It Can Fool Carrying People into Supporting Harmful Causes." This is a guy that obviously he cared at one point in time about his own life, I guess, because he thought this, get a four wheeler. So he's probably active, and doing things productive. And it's like, I don't know. I'm assuming here. So, but nonetheless, he let himself go physically. Apparently, maybe he needs to have a conversation with RFK Jr. But outside of that, he's taking a four wheeler and he's ramming it into somebody's car that he doesn't know who they are, who it belongs to, and he's deciding to take it upon himself that he's going to be this social justice warrior. And he probably doesn't even realize, like, I could get into a lot of trouble for this, being a mindless zombie, right? And he's not realizing that no one, whoever is orchestrating all of this, they don't know my name. They don't know where I live. They don't know who I am. They're not going to come and bail me out. They're not going to they're not going to take care of me for the rest of my life or help me put my life back together. So why am I doing this? And I will call out to those that's watching today. Have that conversation with these people. Just ask them that question. Like, you're doing all of this, and in the event that you get arrested, go to jail, and all that, do you think these people care about you enough to where they're going to come to your aid and say, "I'm going to take care of you until you get back on your feet," type of thing, while you're doing all this destruction? No, they're not. They're going to go back into their $1 million condo, their gated community. They're going to close the blinds. They're going to turn the TV off. They're going to sit into their little, crisscross applesauce serenity and, drift off into another world. They're not going to think about you. But you're sitting in a jail cell rotting for 20 years because you did something stupid. Your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, that's a good preface. This book, An End to the Upside Down Reset, a lot of it is looking at the psychology of leftism and the focus on compassion, which is not a bad thing. Compassion is a good thing, to want to care for people. The problem is when it's weaponized. And the way I describe it is that blind compassion is not a good thing, because then you can be led to support something that's actually harmful because you don't see the bigger picture. We see this a lot these days. But compassion with discernment, on the other hand, that's critical. So wanting to be there for other people, but also discerning what's actually compassionate versus what's not. So harming someone's car, is that really compassionate? In some way, I would bet that person thinks I'm doing a good thing. So the discernment piece is really critical. And one of the reasons I wrote this book was my frustration out of seeing this sort of thing, and knowing people who I think are really good people in reality, and they actually want to help, but maybe they haven't been exposed to other perspectives. And that's why I wanted to break down the psychology so people could actually see systematically, oh, this is where I might be going wrong. So what I was hoping with this book is that maybe people who have more of a conservative leaning, who probably would agree with a lot of what I've written here, would say, I have a liberal friend who's really smart. This would be a way for them to maybe break through a little bit, to crack through what they haven't seen before.
Yeah, yeah. And that's it's a great point. And like me being, I'm down here in Austin. Austin, Texas. I am in the liberal capital of the world, probably. It's just, and I say that, with sincerity, because there's a lot of strong-minded leftists here, and I talk to them all the time, and a lot of them, and it's, I guess I consider myself lucky, okay, because they're open to talk to me initially because they assume I'm a Democrat, or they assume that I'm on their side just for the simple fact that I'm black. So they automatically just open up. They're like, oh yeah, and I'm just like, and then once I open my mouth and I start talking, and they're kind of like, so you see a immediate transformation of them. It's like a demon comes out, and it's just like, okay, get the holy water. But it's funny to me. I find it hilarious actually, because some of them actually realize that, and it goes back to my earlier point, that they don't believe half the stuff that they say. They just look for their silos, and once they're out of their silo, they have to be normal, because they know that it's abnormal to the rest of their surroundings in a public sphere, that the way their behavior is. Take for example, the Tesla dealership here in Austin. They've been protesting down there for a few days now, and so now we have conservatives that's counter protesting against them, and you see a stark difference. Not only in the dress, but in the just the behavior, and you see them, like, they dissipate after a couple of hours, and they're walking back, and they're like being very cautious as to, like, where they parking, and what kind of cars they're driving. They're covering their license plates and stuff like that, because they know, like, I can't be seen publicly, because I might get made out when I go to work, or my livelihood will be threatened now. And so I have to dress this way to conceal who I am, because once I get back into, because those are my coworkers across the street over there, but that's counter protesting me, and I recognize them, and they recognize me, and so they're taking a picture of me, so they might tell the boss, and I might get fired tomorrow now, and so now they're being conscious of what they're doing, because reality is starting to set in, and yes, they may think they care about this cause, but in the reality, it's like, why am I really out here protesting Elon Musk and a Tesla dealership? What does that equate to exactly? And when you ask them that question, they really can't. They can't give you a rational answer to that. They're like, "Well, Elon Musk is just evil," and it's like, "Well, how did he become evil all of a sudden? You just had a Tesla. You just bought you." before Donald Trump became, you're like, at what point of this transition did he become evil and all of a sudden you hate his guts because he exposed corruption and it's mostly tied to Democrats? Like, help me understand here. And they can't give you an answer, and so it's just mind-boggling to me. And to your point to your book, I it's it's almost it's almost antithetical to society's existence that you have people that are being caught up in they want to care about something, but now we have to step back and say, should I care? Because if I care, then now I'm going to be targeted because I'm caring about a cause or I'm caring about something that can be misconstrued to be tied to an organization or tied to some nefarious, thing. And now my livelihood is in jeopardy.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? So, how do we navigate around that?
And what you're pointing to is an extreme tribalism. And I talk about this in the book and Into the Upside Down Reset, tribal biases
Yes,
and not wanting
exactly.
to look different than the other people around you, wanting to conform. So maybe what we're talking about here, Randy, is the need for courage for people to stand up for what they actually think is logical and truthful and really compassionate
Hmm.
and care less about what other people think of them. And I know that's a challenging thing. I've had to go through that myself writing all these books, and I'm sure you've had to deal with that too. Anyone speaking publicly, we have to acknowledge that not everyone's going to agree with us, and that's okay. We're not always conforming. So maybe what we're seeing here in some ways is just part of the growth of humanity. And we're seeing it in a very messy way, but people are going to be forced to have to wake up to this more independent way of looking at life and more truth-based way of looking at life, because if not, we're going to continue to have chaos.
Hmm. I agree. I agree with you. And I'm so happy you hit that word tribalism because that's exactly what it is. It is tribalism, and we all have our tribes. We naturally as humans we naturally gravitate and see people conflate tribe. When they hear the word tribe, they think about cultural tribes, not so much race related, but just cultural based. And so it's not even about that. It's about your ideological mind frame. You naturally gravitate to people that act like you, think like you, and you say, you know what, I'm comfortable in this group setting, regardless of how you all may move, to others, but you're comfortable in that setting, and they're comfortable with you, and so you move as a tribe together, and you band together, and you do things together, and this creates these cultivars, and now you're seeing all these different groups that are forming, and some gel together well together, and some are just very very conflictual, and so I I see it down here in Texas a lot. It's just like you go. It's literally like it's almost like living in Europe. It's so weird because you're literally going from one side of town to the other. You're like crossing into a whole nother country. Kid you
Right?
not, kid you not. And it's like, man, did I just cross over into Germany or Italy, Spain? Like, what's going on here? Because it's like a totally different mindset, like almost even a different language. Because they talk different, and they
Right.
act differently. And so it's not even so much. I'm not even speaking like culturally. I'm just saying like just the mindset and the way they carry themselves, the way they act, and all of that. Everybody's an American. It's just the tribe, and so the vibe that I pick up and the vibe that I sense is that as a society we have shifted away from having a the willingness to come to come to the table and say, you know what, you have your differences, I have my differences, we can still coexist and air out our grievances and our differences to the government, and whoever prevails for the day, and we just go home and it is what it is. We have transcended that mentality. It's now kill or be killed, quite literally. And whoever's the loudest, could drown out, the other voices, and so nothing's getting accomplished. You see legislatures across the states, they're throwing their hands up. They're essentially like, just, all right, we're gonna pass these meaningless bills and listen to all these lobbyists and take our money and go home for the go home for the day, and it's whatever. And the American people, they're increasingly becoming ignorant to the political downplay of what's going on in the grander scheme of things. And you have the federal government, who is now in the position of, we're trying to get us back to the way things should be, but they're being ignored now, holistically. You have small enclaves of people that's paying attention, but on a grander scheme of things, we're still ignoring that, 'cause we're not learning from that. So, just my rant.
Yeah, well, one thought here that maybe is foundational to everything you said is if the newer generations understand all these various perspectives and all the different types of psychology, and that starts with the parents. To me, the parents exposing their children to all these ways of thinking. So maybe that's the solution if we really want to look long term, is for the parents to wake up and make sure they pass that on to their children, because that's not what is always happening right now, because children are fed into the mainstream system, and we know that they're given a very biased perspective, and then they think they're being compassionate because they've only heard one side of the aisle, and then we end up with the paradoxes and all this turmoil we talked about.
You're absolutely right. Parents have largely, in this generation, parents have neglected their children. And so I I would say my generation, because my children are in their 20s now, we have neglected this generation of kids that's coming up now. 'Cause they're like, okay, think I got it, but and they're caught up in their little silos right now. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's calling me a little bit more frequently now with political questions, and she's like, okay, I just saw this on TV, and I need some explanations here, because they said this, and so I have to step out of my silo and give her the down the middle explanation of it, and let her make her decision from there, and say, do some research. This is what I point her to, the resources of, and then she'll call me back. She's like, okay, I understand now, and I'm like, okay, good job. and I'm like, whew. Dodge that bullet. Because I be wanting so bad to steer her into no, that's a leftist. Don't listen to them. I be wanting to do that, but I'm like, no. I want her to have an independent mind and look at the facts, look at different resources, and like you said, have different perspectives and take those in, and then make an informed decision based on the information presented. And that's why I aim to teach everybody. I don't care what political side you fall on. At the end of the day, have your facts straight. That's all I care about. You can believe what you want to believe, but just have your facts straight. If you think that a man can have a baby, show me the facts. That's all I ask. Outside of a seahorse and outside of birds, you show me a man having a baby, and then I'm like, okay, I can see. Until that day comes, hey, sorry, I'm just not gonna buy it. Mark, tell people where they can follow you and support you, sir.
Yeah, well, Randy, thanks for having me.
And share any final thoughts you have. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'll just one final thought is that I've been hearing more and more from concerned mothers these days. Who say, Mark, I'm reading your books, and what's the way that we're going to educate the next generation? So I'm still thinking about this myself, but I like the way you just described it, which is to provide all sides of the aisle, and not just to show one side of the picture and then let people draw their own conclusions. So let's just say someone's really conservative and doesn't agree with what the left is doing. I think it's still important to have exposure to knowing what the left is saying and why they believe it, and then showing the other side. So I think this idea of truth and critical thinking and transparency, showing everything, that would be where I am, at least currently. And in terms of where your audience can find my work, I have a website, markgober.com, markgober.com. It has information on all my books. There are 7 books currently. You can find them on Amazon. They're in hard copy, Kindle, and Audible formats. I narrate all the audibles myself. And I also have a podcast series on the nature of consciousness, more metaphysical things like near-death experiences, which I mentioned, so the science of the afterlife. It's called Where is My Mind? And it's 8 episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major podcast players.
Awesome. Mark, it's a pleasure as always. Thanks for being here today. I look forward to having you back on so we can get into the more of the wonders of the mind and where people are are taking us down this rabbit hole of what I call society. And be safe out there, and God bless you, sir. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Randy. Same to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Be safe. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Gober. Hey, check out his books. Like I said, like we've been talking, seven book series. The into the Upside Down Reset series, and there's different ones out there. And as he said, you can get it on Amazon and check out his podcasts on Spotify, and markgober.com. And check it out, support him. He's doing great stuff out there, and get on that. So, folks, I'm gonna jump up out of here. I have a lot to do today. I hate Mondays. I really do. It seemed like when the weekend passes, it's like everything comes to a complete stop, and it just backs up. And then Monday comes, and it's like, okay, hit play, boom, and then it just hits you with everything. So I got some stuff to do, but. Folks, it's a pleasure as always. I will catch you all on Friday, I think. I'll be here Friday. I don't know. I gotta look at my calendar. It's just been crazy. But be safe out there. God bless you all. And I will holler at y'all later. Take care and God bless. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in today. Please be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and share. And go to rpurham.com for more information. See you all soon. Take care. God bless.